Looking at pictures, I felt a certain way about how we looked together. And it was like I was always so overwhelming. And since we started that plastic surgery journey, it's been like a whole other level of intimacy. It's happening to them too. It's not just me, it's us.
Hey friends, this is the Next Level Glam podcast, and I'm Glam Gal. Thank you for joining me as I discuss all things transformation inside and out with my sisters in Christ. Pull up a chair, it's about to go next level.
Hey friend, thank you for joining me. Welcome to season 2 of the Next Level Glam podcast. It's so good to see you here. It's been one heck of a break. Much needed. There's been a lot of life lived, softball games, sunsets, birthdays, holidays. It's really, really important to me that my family, comes first. Initially, I was like, yes, we're going to come back and hit it hard. And then just kind of felt at times like, would it even matter if I just, quit? But God is faithful. And I had a few of you pop into my DMs telling me what it meant to you to have this podcast up and running. So it's because of you that we are here in season 2. Praise the Lord. When we parted ways at the end of the first season, I had a really, really big appointment coming up. I shared how I had a consultation with my plastic surgeon. It was a really, really wonderful appointment. I did post a behind the scenes reel on Instagram. Again, it's at the Next Level Glam podcast. You can go and check it out. Kind of get a feel for what my appointments are kind of like, or what, consultations are kind of like, just a quick little window. I got what procedures that we agreed upon, the recovery. He kind of gave me an idea of what to expect. And then, of course, you leave with the bill, right? It's really empowering to leave with the steps to move forward. There is still a lot of things that I need to figure out. And that's kind of the hard part because, of course, you just want to sign your name on the dotted line the minute you're there. And a lot of people do, but it's just not my situation to do so. There's a lot of discussion with my husband and planning and things that I need to look at to be able to move forward with that. So that's kind of the setback with that. It's very exciting, but yet you're like, now how do I get to this next mountain, this next obstacle of making this happen? And of course, if you follow me on Instagram, I'm always talking about how God is going to make a way and how God is providing for me. Despite my circumstances, and that I share on a personal level because plastic surgery is not cheap. It's not easy. It's a long road and it involves a lot of care. And that's kind of like things that I've learned since my very first round. It really has contributed to an overall sense of peace and belonging in my own body, which has been priceless. And I know I have more peace about it today than I ever have. But I do, like I said on the other coin, struggle because I want it done and I want it done now. There's like this pressure within myself to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And it's like, it's a time race, really. It's kind of like once you even have surgery, you want to like just rock those results, but there's such a long like landing strip, so to speak, before you can even really do that because there's just so much in recovery. So it's been like training my mind to keep just breaking these down into baby step goals. And I've come far, but there, like I said, there's more to accomplish. And that being said, I know that this flesh is never going to be perfect. My standard isn't perfection. Obviously, you have days where you have comparison and things that pop up, the covetousness that we have in our flesh that can really make you feel that you're not, good enough the way that you are. And I just always tell myself, like scripture says, his grace is sufficient enough for me. That's all we need is his grace. It's the biggest blessing that we have as believers is God's grace. The full salvation package of not just being saved, but being made a child of God, a joint heir with Christ. So that in perspective always kind of helps me kind of cool my heels a little bit when it comes to this topic. I'm not the only woman, wife, person who encounters these obstacles of going after a significant purchase that a lot of people will say is selfish, unnecessary, yada, yada, yada. And that's why I like to talk about it on the podcast, because unless you know, you don't know. But it is a whole other ball game when you are in a relationship with someone, not only change the plastic surgery game, but our entire marriage. And this is just like one part of our story is how we have taken on the plastic surgery. And on the way back from the appointment and the last few times I've gone, I've really decreased the harping on him for his feedback, in terms of my husband. I love hearing his feedback when it fits me, but there are times where his feedback isn't something that I necessarily want to hear. And that's been really, really hard for me to give him a spot to have an opinion about it. But it made me think on the way back as I was preparing to ask him yet again how he was feeling about things, like letting things marinate so we could have a discussion about it. And it made me think about how much we've changed since we've had plastic surgery and how much we've changed because of it. And I kind of wanted to talk about the transformation of my relationship with my person and how it's been affected by plastic surgery because it's a really, really important aspect when you're going about to have plastic surgery and you're married. It's something that isn't talked about enough. It's like a lot of times people go and have surgery for themselves and they don't have a partner, this and that. And it's like in my case, I did have a partner that I wanted to take with me and he wanted to be there with me every step of the way. And our marriage is set up where it's like our money and, our life, it's not, divided down the middle. It's very, very like intimate with one another. I don't think, I mean, like, it wasn't always that way. It has been a growth process in order for him to kind of get to know me better so he could understand why I'm after the things that I'm after. A lot of people will tell you that like divorce is something that's common after plastic surgery. And I can honestly say that I knew I always wanted plastic surgery, don't get me wrong, but a huge motivating factor in me getting it as soon as I wanted to, or as like to get it done, was for me to enjoy my marriage in a whole or different way. And if you need me to go into details on that, you can let me know, drop me a DM. But before I can share about how it's transformed our marriage, I guess I should share just a little bit of background about who we are exactly. I met my husband when I was like 13 or 14 years old. And by met, I mean I was at a local fish fry hole in the wall place in my little podunk town here. And there was this really, really cute boy that was bussing tables. I remember an aura around this person. He stuck out to me. And we didn't like meet at that moment, but for me, I that's where I remember him. And a couple of years later, I was a freshman in high school working one of my first jobs as a cashier at a small grocery store. And one day I looked up at the automatic doors opening, and that face that I saw at that restaurant all those years ago, like walked in. It was like an immediate click. I knew who he was. I mean, like I knew that that was who I saw. The same aura effect. It felt like, even looking back in time right now, it seems like slow motion to me. I can like literally see that moment in time. Like it really was to me, love at first sight. Just me though, just on my part. He was kind of like a diamond in a rough that you would say. Even before I got to him and I got to do a few upgrades, as far as like the skincare habits and the wardrobe. He's always had such beautiful tan skin, thick hair, a great smile, and he always made me laugh. So he's just relaxed and easy on the eyes and easy on the soul. And I guess that's like the best way I can round up what my husband is really like. He was just kind of a friend that we would work together. And, for me, that was just like the cherry on top. For me, seeing how I saw myself at that time, he was way out of my league. I really feel like for the most of our relationship, actually, he was out of my league. I always felt like I wasn't good enough in terms of like looks to be with him. I always felt that people were looking at us kind of like figuring us out, like how we came to be together. Even myself looking at pictures, I felt a certain way about how we looked together. And it was like I was always so overwhelming. He obviously did not remember me from that restaurant. He didn't remember seeing me as he walked through the doors to start his, job at the grocery store. I was always kind of more of a backdrop to him. He went to a different school. He was young, like most boys are, right? Playing the field. I just, over those first handful of years, I just showed him how much I really cared about him, gifts and compliments and things like that. I don't want to share like all the gory details, guys, but suffice it to say, I cast my pride to the wind. The ball was not in my court. He comes from an average Midwest family. He sees himself as an everyday John, nothing special. Where when I look at him, it's like he's the world to me. Anyone who has an encounter with him always talks about how kind and funny he is. So I just feel like truly the most blessed, luckiest gal on the planet to have what I have with him. After 7 years of being passing ships in the night, working through high school and some college, just missing each other, but still brimming on the edges of like social circles, we snowballed into a situation. It didn't look like either of us really expected it to look like. One of the favorite things that he tells me is that he loves me more today than he does yesterday. And that's just such a sweet thing to hear because I know I'm very difficult. I'm not perfect. I'm a challenging person. I'm just going to throw that out there to you. I'm absolutely somebody who's desperate for God's grace. But to hear that he's able to love me and see those things in me, it allows me to basically love myself. And he's seen me at my worst where I didn't love myself. And he's seen me where I'm at today. Within the last 14 years, that's how long we've actually been together. We've had a child, we got married. And every day I see that I wasn't wrong about the man that I feel that the Lord had shined a light on for me. And, I do believe that having years of like knowing each other as friends, I think helped us tremendously over the years. The more that we get to know one another, we know that we both draw from the same well. for the living water, which is Christ, grace. It's been a tremendous transition in our relationship. You're like, we get it. You love one another. Okay, I'm glad that's clear. But he has proven himself loyal and has never left my side, whether it was through parenthood, beauty school, hard times, throughout the weight loss, the depression, and yes, the plastic surgery journey. During my research phase, which really it didn't include my husband at all, to be honest with you. This was something I was doing in secret. I took note about how women encountered struggles getting their spouse to be on the same page. So I was already kind of going in a little intimidated that he was already going to tell me no. I was keeping that to myself because I wasn't ready to let him in and be vulnerable about how I felt about myself. I didn't want to put a shining light on my imperfections. That was something that I started praying on immediately during my research phase. I prayed that the Lord would start to work in my husband's heart to hear me out and to be understanding on the issue. And if it be God's will, a lot of times I would be anxious and snappy in the past because I had to try on 20 outfits and I settled on one that didn't really fit and it didn't flatter me. And I hated how it put me in a bad mood. I hated what I saw in the mirror. I could never just feel like a little baddie. You know what I'm saying? I mean, he wasn't blind to my situation, guys. I don't like to put words in his mouth. So if you ever want me to have him on here and interview my husband, if you have questions you want me to ask my husband, drop me a DM over at the Next Level Glam podcast. I'd love to do that. I'm sure he would just love to be a guest here. But I will say that there wasn't that physical attraction to me initially. That's something that I think developed over time as far as my personality and my friendship and my loyalty and my honest to God care and love for him. And I'm not saying I was the most hideous beast, guys. I'm just saying I don't think that was overwhelmingly the pull that he had towards me. So he never said a negative word about my body to me or anything like that. And it's of course, he loved me for me, but I knew that there was definitely room for stoking that fire a little bit. I felt like I just needed some help and some tweaks. And I think he could probably tell you right now that it's been worth the investment. If you don't feel good about yourself, even your partner can't make you feel good about yourself. So, I mean, I'm sure he picked up on that too, but he's always been just I don't know. I want to say more passive about it. And I guess that kind of bothered me a little bit too. I wanted my husband to be obsessed with me. And that's kind of what pushed me even further to make some changes that I felt we both would enjoy. You know what I'm saying? And God knows I felt like he could never really love them or be attracted to them because I couldn't be, right? If I was delivered a compliment, I immediately discarded it because I couldn't see how it was true. I could not see anything myself that made me feel good about me. And that's just honest to God truth. All right. I was drowning in that disconnect between what I wanted to see and reality. And by the way, I still kind of do. That's just facts. And my husband as a person, I mean, he's always been a good-looking man, but he really doesn't stare at the mirror and break himself down the way that I do. And I will say that from the time that we met until just before we got together, he did have a procedure done that's very visible that basically is kind of like a failed situation. And it does hit his confidence a little bit. It did totally change the way that he looks. And I think that affected him on a personal level. And I knew that. So through that connection point, when he shared that with me, I felt like I had access to his compassion for feeling like if he was in a place to do something about it or wanted to do something about it, the support that he would like to have. And that kind of opened him up to the situation when I was asking him about getting, A, B, and C done at the plastic surgeon's office and having his support. And it wasn't manipulation, guys. It was just having a real heart to heart about that situation. So also sharing with him what it could mean for our relationship, the results. I feel like he was 75, 80% on board with the idea. The other part is along the journey is he did see me trying to make changes. It wasn't just I woke up one night and was this is it. I was a whole couple of year process of researching, trying to make healthy choices. And he also saw me fall out at times, witnessing me powerless in a depression because all of my hard work still didn't yield a result that I just could live with, quite honestly. So, we started talking about things more and more. And honestly, I know it's not like talking about, the Packer game to him. I know that sometimes he is probably rolling his eyes on the inside about me mentioning another plastic surgery detail, but he is my person. And there's no one else that I believe understands what I'm going through or what I've gone through the way he has because he's seen everything behind the scenes. He's been there. He's seen all the struggles and how hard we've had to work to get where we are. And so I just I tell him absolutely pretty much everything. And he's always been really, really kind and patient with me to like hear me out and encourage me. And like he's not perfect. There are still times that we have something to do, like we drive down, the 3.5 hours to go see him. Trust me, we're not always in a perfect mood. Sometimes we have stuff going on at home uh, that kind of set the day off weird. And then I get really stressy if we're running late. And there are times where obviously we both could practice a little bit more patience, and there have been times where I would like a little bit more support on certain things, but like we're growing, we're learning, and we need to give each other grace. But I can honestly say that since we've been together and since we started that plastic surgery journey, it's been like a whole other level of intimacy, just like a deepening of our love and our commitment to one another. I was obsessed with it because of my desire and all the research I've done. So I was kind of like 3, 4 steps ahead of him in that game, but he was like open to learning, which is really, really important because again, like your person is probably going to be your caregiver. So it's really, really important that they show some general interest and understanding and realize really the weight of that blessing. Like I honestly, I kind of took that for granted. I really did. That's something that I look back and now I'm just so grateful for. Now knowing that I've talked to a lot of people where that wasn't the case and it kind of broke up their relationship or it was just too much for their relationship. Some men or spouses aren't in a place to offer that support. They either have some preconceived opinion about what they don't understand about plastic surgery, or they don't support their person going after self-improvement because they're like insecure, or maybe they're just, kind of short-sighted and judgy. I'm really, really grateful that God softened his heart toward the whole thing. And especially how from initially I was going to go, like I said, to Mexico to do it for like a one-time surgery with, a random surgeon. And, I ditched that path and I decided to go to like a top Chicago plastic surgeon for what I knew was going to be like multiple rounds of combo procedures. Like I knew that before I walked in. Okay. I did not tell my husband that. I gave him like the bare knowledge of like what I wanted, and on top of that, like I was going to for something else, and I kind of was a little sneaky about it just because I think it would have intimidated him to know like fully how many rounds I had in mind, considering if you know the price tag on things, guys. Like I said, we're an average family in terms of, where we sit financially in America, in our economy and stuff like that. Like we're not Rockefellers, okay? So I knew that that was going to be intimidating for him to realize if I gave him too much too soon. It's time, it's money, it's energy, and I barely knew, guys, what I was all asking of him, but I knew enough to know that not everyone is capable of doing that for their person because it is a very demanding aspect in life. This whole plastic surgery thing is very, very demanding. It's happening to them too. It's not just me, it's us. All right. We may be sitting on that table, right? We might be the one in the consultation room that has to, have to humble ourselves in those really, really awful paper robes and awful lighting. But these amazing guys, they're the ones who are hauling our butts to every single appointment and every single surgery, wheeling our butts out to get, home after surgery and taking care of us, which is a huge undertaking. Huge. My husband has not missed a single appointment. He's driven to every single appointment. He's driven to every single surgery, picked me up from every single surgery, waited. I mean, there's just been so many things that he's done that, I mean, that are priceless to me, the things that he's shown up for me for. And he's taken wonderful care of me. It's definitely a growing process and a learning process. It's both something that we've both never done before when we first started. So it's been really interesting to see just like how knowledgeable and confident he is when we talk about the next stage here. Like I've said before, there is a lot between A and B. There's a lot between the consult to the pre-op, right? And the pre-op to the surgery, and then like the surgery and that whole recovering stage. And, they deal with that first and second hand. So we truly don't know until we know and that we're going through it, but we need to take them along with you. And I really, really hope that you have the emotional support that you need and that you're able to experience all the little things, the experience overall to bring you guys closer together and have it show you how much they love you, because I know how much my husband loves me, like truly through the actions that he's done supporting me in this whole entire thing. I didn't know at that time either, like how much we were going to learn that we needed Christ to get us through and continue to get us through this whole entire thing. It truly does make you as a couple, or it can absolutely break you. We left that initial consult back in 2020 in completely different places, and you could feel the rift shifting us apart as we drove home because we both got the same information. And it's a lot. It's just so much to take in. I had waited like 6 months for that consultation. And like when it finally comes and goes, there's just so much to process. I don't know how else to put it. I'm not going to lie and say that there wasn't some hurt that he wasn't like immediately signing papers with me and cutting a check with me. But I pushed forward and laid down, my armor, like I said, for the first time in the 10 years that I had let him in, like since we had been together and to let him know fully about the situation. And I knew he had to know the full scale of what was going on with me. We pulled over to grab a snack. I brought it up by asking his thoughts on the experience and how he thought we should proceed or not. I had to throw that in there too. And that was really, really scary. I understand that a lot of people who know me will actually say that he's not allowed to say no to me. And I will say, in a sense, it's true. It's a characteristic that I'm learning to subdue. But I was ready to fight for what I really, really wanted, something that I felt was really, really for me. So, in that moment of me bearing my shame and being vulnerable, as I explained to him, to put himself in my shoes, right? And what a day in my life really looks like from my point of view. Like how much time and energy I think about this, or I say this to myself, or, and, people will try to diminish your reasonings when you decide to share that you're having surgery. Their reactions and judgments, sometimes you won't even see coming. Like you think it's like safe to share, and people will be like, "Don't do that." Like don't do that. Like you don't need that, or that's too expensive, and you're selfish, and that's vain, and all those things. So that's why a lot of people who do have plastic surgery, they don't tell anyone. Or like they tell them what they want when they want. And that's me. I've been somebody who's like slowly opening up to sharing about my experience, and there's many, many reasons for that. But your person should absolutely at this point understand where you are coming from, because now you have told them how it's been affecting you, but also affecting them too. You're probably asking, so what's the point here, Jillian? Okay. From the very beginning of introducing my husband to the idea, to some knowledge, he went from being passive yet understanding to engaged and supportive. We have conversations about this now. Like when I'm feeling snappy, he is very tuned into how I'm feeling about myself. This process showed us that we are, in fact, a team in a completely different way. Whether it was the tension of the finances, the stress that can surround the entire surgery process, running into complications in recovery, the bad days where I need encouragement about my progress, results, it has all been worth it. Like I've had to learn that although he is generous, there is a part of me that needs to learn to make room for him too, because this whole journey can become all consuming. I kid you not. I've learned ultimately about my husband that he is actually open and willing to change, and he's actually probably one of the coolest. He is literally MVP, VIP for life. We went from being lazy bums. I'm not joking. Like when we first together, just being lazy bums who never gave a second thought to our lifestyle issues, where now we know the importance of being active and making better choices, how it affects us in so many areas of our lives. And acknowledging that was a huge step forward in our relationship and in our quality of life. Getting to a place where I am pushing to be the best I can be. And in return, he's been great about pushing himself to join me in that pursuit for himself. And that's another thing is like people will be like, your husband doesn't need to lose weight, because my husband is literally like athletically built. He's probably like 5'8" or something, 150 pounds, like soaking wet. And, there's always improvements, to be made. Just because somebody is smaller doesn't mean that they are healthy. And what I want for him is to be healthy. And I don't want us to peak yet. I want us to keep striving to look better in our age, to enjoy quality of life, and like keep things spicy. You know what I'm saying? Like people, especially Christians, they have a hard time admitting that, but like keeping things spicy in your marriage is like super, super important, that you're into each other and find each other attractive and things like that. It's very important for me to invest in that area of our relationship, in our area of our life. He's willing to invest in me. I realize, even at a cost to himself, we've had to make some really, really big sacrifices in order to make it happen. And the fact that he was willing to do that for me, I mean, that's better than any bouquet of roses. Like you'll probably never, ever, ever see me on Instagram on my stories sharing about a big bouquet of roses or some like overwhelming action of material love from him, because I just look for his love in actions in other ways. I would rather have the plastic surgery than the handbags and the diamonds and all of that. So I mean it just says a hell of a lot more to me than the stuff does, because it's just such a comprehensive commitment that he was willing to do and has done with me these last 4 years. We've grown our communication skills, having to have some really tough conversations about sensitive topics, learning how to ref those. and have them have a productive outcome. We find that our relationship is solid, working towards a common goal and enjoying the benefits it's brought to other parts of our lives as well. Bow chicka wow wow. So, with that being said, I'd like to ask you, if you're looking to have plastic surgery, have you told your person already? How did they respond? And if you're already off the table and in a relationship, how would you say the process has affected your marriage? Please come on over and join the conversation on Instagram, guys. That's where I love to hang out. My handle is at the Next Level Glam Podcast. I'd love to hear from you, hear some of these answers. I hope you got to learn a little bit more about me and my favorite person here on earth, with the exception of, my daughter. I love my daughter, but like my person. If you feel intimidated about broaching this subject in your relationship, that I want you to know that, just take some time and get your research on. Know what you want, why you want it, pray about it. Can't say that enough. And work on, some communication, just be open to have that, back and forth with your person. And you might just be surprised about how they choose to support you. It might literally be a whole avenue in your relationship that you didn't even realize you could unlock. I can't explain it in great words about the connection point that my husband and I have. It's priceless. And if I catch you next week for a new episode, we're going to get back to the gospel goodness, because that's really what pushes us forward, is refreshing and renewing ourselves in the gospel. And I hope to see you there. And until then, guys, grow in his grace.